The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Book 3, The Castle of Llyr. Chapter 16, A Meeting of Strangers.
I am Eilonwy, daughter of Angrad, daughter of Regat, continued Eilonwy, putting her hand to the silver crescent at her throat. But who are you? She repeated. I haven't the least idea in the world what you're talking about. Wake up, Tarn cried, shaking her. You're dreaming. Why, yes, as a matter of fact, I was, Eilonwy answered with a vague and sleepy smile. But how did you guess? I don't believe dreaming actually shows when you're doing it. She paused, frowning. Or does it? Sometime I shall have to find out. The only way, I suppose, is to look at myself when I'm asleep. And how I might go about that, I can't imagine. Her voice faltered and trailed away. She seemed suddenly to forget Tarn was even there and sank back onto the couch. Difficult, she murmured. Like trying to turn yourself inside out. Or would it be outside in? Eilonwy, look at me. Tarn tried to raise her, but Eilonwy, with a little cry of annoyance, drew away. You must listen, Tarn insisted. That's what I've been doing, she replied. So far you've made no sense whatever. I was much more comfortable asleep. I'd rather dream than be shouted at. But what was I dreaming? A pleasant dream with a pig in it? And someone who... Oh, no, it's gone now, faster than a butterfly. You've spoiled it! Tarn had forced the girl to sit upright once more. Now he stared at her with dread. Despite her travel-stained garments and disheveled hair, she appeared unharmed. But her eyes were strangely depthless. It was not sleep that filled her, and his hands trembled as he realized Eilonwy had been drugged, or, his heart chilled at the thought of it, bewitched. Listen carefully, he pleaded. There is no time. I don't believe people should be allowed to come stamping into other people's dreams without asking first, Eilonwy said with some vexation. There's something impolite about it, like walking into a spider web when the spider's still using it. Tarn ran to the casement. He could see nothing of the companions below, nor any sign of Ka. The moon was down, and the sky would soon lighten. Quickly, he turned back to Eilonwy. Make haste, I beg you, he cried. Climb down with me. The rope is strong enough for both of us. A rope? Exclaimed Eilonwy. Me go sliding down with you? I've only known you these few moments, but it seems to me you make the silliest suggestions. No, thank you. She stifled a yawn. You might try sliding down the rope yourself, she added with a certain sharpness, and let me go back to sleep. I hope I can remember where I left off. That's the worst of having your dreams broken into. You can never find it again. Tarn, sick with alarm, knelt beside her. What holds you? He whispered. Fight against it. Can you not remember me? Tarn, assistant pig keeper? How interesting, remarked Eilonwy. Sometime you must tell me more about yourself, but not now. Think, Tarn urged. Remember Caer Dallben, Call, Henwyn. Through the casement, the sea wind carried trails of mist like tangled vines. Tarn spoke the names again, and the names of the companions. Eilonwy's glance was so distant that she herself seemed far from the chamber. Caer Dallben, she murmured. How curious! I think that might have been part of my dream, too. There was an orchard. The trees were in blossom. I was climbing up as high as I could go. Yes, so it was, Tarn persisted eagerly. I too remember the day. You said you'd climb to the very top of the apple tree. I warned you not to, but you did anyway. I wanted to learn the trees, Eilonwy went on. You must learn them anew every year, she said, for they are always different. And in the dream I'd gone to the last branch. It was no dream, Tarn urged, but the life you know, your own life, not a shadow that vanishes in the sun. Indeed, you went to the highest branch. It snapped, as I feared it would. How should anyone know someone else's dream? Said Eilonwy, as though speaking to herself. Yes, it broke and I was falling. There was someone below who caught me. Could it have been an assistant pig keeper? I wonder what became of him. He is here now, Tarn said quietly. He has long sought you, and in ways even he himself did not know. Now that he has found you, can you not find your path back to him? Eilonwy rose to her feet. Her eyes flickered, and for the first time a light shone in them. Tarn held out his hands to her. She hesitated, then took a step forward. But even as she moved to him, her glance turned shallow and the light died. It is a dream, no more than that, she whispered and turned away. Arkin has done this to you, Taran cried. She will harm you no longer. He seized the girl's arm and drew her toward the casement. At the sound of Arkin's name, Eilonwy stiffened and tore herself from him. She spun to face him. How dare you touch a princess of the house of Llyr? Her voice was sharp. Her eyes had lost their warmth, and Taran saw the brief moment of recollection and fled. He knew that Eilonwy at all costs must be taken from this dread place. His terror and dismay grew with the thought that perhaps even now she was beyond hope. He struggled to catch her by the waist and pull her over his shoulder. Eilonwy struck him full in the face with such force that he staggered back. Yet it was not the blow that pained him, but her scornful glance. On her lips now was a smile of mockery and malice. He was a stranger to her, and he feared his heart would break. Once more he tried to seize her. Eilonwy, with a cry of rage, twisted away and broke free. Arkin! She called. Arkin, help me! She ran to the portal of the chamber and into the corridor. Taran snatched up the rushlight and raced after the fleeing princess. Her sandals clattered down the shadowed hallway. He glimpsed an edge of her robe vanishing around a corner. She had not ceased to call Arkin's name. In another moment, the castle would be roused and the companions discovered. Taran cursed himself for a blunderer. He had no choice now but to overtake the bewitched girl before every hope of escape faded. Already he heard a shout from the wall and the clash of blades. The rushlight scorched his hand and he cast it aside. In the darkness, he sped to the end of the corridor and flung himself down a flight of steps. The great hall of Caer Callur stretched before him. The crimson haze of daybreak filled its ruined casements. Eilonwy fled across the wide stretch of worn and crumbling flagstones and vanished again. A hand gripped his jacket and spun him around. A torch flared in his eyes. The pig keeper, hissed Mag. The chief steward plucked a dagger from the fold of his garments and thrust at Taran, who flung up an arm to ward off the blow. The dagger glanced aside. Mag cursed and swept the torch like a sword. Taran fell back, seeking to draw his own weapon. The shouts of the awakened guards filled the great hall. In another instant, he caught sight of Gwydion and the companions at his heels. Mag spun around. Fluider had broken away from the press of warriors and was racing at top speed toward the chief steward. The bard's spiky yellow hair streamed behind him, and his face shone with furious triumph.
The spider is mine!
Cried Fluider, his blade whistling about his head. Mag, at the sight of the frenzied bard, yelled in terror and tried to flee. The bard was upon him in a moment, striking right and left with the flat of his sword in such a wild onslaught that most of his blows missed their mark. Mag, with the strength of desperation, sprang at the bard's throat and grappled with him. Before Taran could come to Fluider's aid, a warrior with an axe beset him, and, despite his stout defense, Taran found himself driven back toward a corner of the hall. Amid the confusion of the fray, he saw Gwydion and Rune struggling against other warriors. The Prince of Mona laid about him furiously with his broken sword, and it was one of Rune's sharp blows that killed Taran's assailant. Fluider and Mag were still locked in combat. As Taran raced to the side of the bard, the dark, shaggy form of Gurgi overtook him. With a yelp of rage, Gurgi leaped into the air and clung to Mag's shoulders. The chief steward still wore his silver chain of office. Gurgi snatched it and let himself swing free. Mag gasped and stumbled backward, choking and hissing, while Gurgi dangled for an instant, then sprang clear of the falling steward. In a flash, the bard was upon the prostrate Mag. Heedless of the buffeting from Mag's flailing legs, Gurgi had laid hold of him by the heels and hung on with all his strength, while Fluider, sitting on Mag's head, seemed indeed to be carrying out his threat of squashing the treacherous chief steward. Gwydion, with Drinwin unsheathed and blazing, had cut down two warriors who now sprawled motionless on the flagstones. Terrified at the sight of the flaming weapon, the remaining guards fled. With long strides, Gwydion hastened to the companions. Eilonwy is bewitched, Taran cried. I have lost her. Gwydion's eyes went to the end of the hall, where scarlet draperies had been flung back from an alcove. Eilonwy stood there, and beside her, Arkin.